with the court. It's going to be 200 to 12 minutes. All right, you may proceed. And perhaps we should point out for the court and the record that the previous witness is sitting in the courtroom. Mr. Gartner has indicated he's not going to call him again and has no objection. I'm not going to call him again. All right, he can stay. Okay. Could you state your full name for the record, please? Delia Nagel, N-A-G-E-L. N-A-G-E-L? Yes, sir. Okay. And try to speak right into that microphone. Raise it up a little bit, too. It will come up. It's just a gooseneck. Just pull the whole thing. Pull the whole thing. That's right. Okay. Try to speak up as well as you can so that everybody can hear you. Okay. Now, where were you employed? I'm employed by Stockman Incorporated. Okay. And when did you first go to work for Stockman? As best you can recall, 1974. Okay. So you've worked for Stockman on a continuing basis for 10 years? Yes, sir. All right. And when you went to work for Stockman, what was the first job that you had as an employee at Stockman? They asked me to clear credit cards. Okay. And then after that, they asked me to do the daily books. They trained me to do the daily books. Okay. And for what length of time did you do the daily books? Probably 4 or 5 years. Okay. And what was the next thing you did for Stockman? And then I started supervising some employees in the office. Okay. And do you still do that now? Yes, sir. Okay. And would you have a specific job title now? Or what do you generally do in the office besides, well, sometimes they call me office manager, sometimes secretary, sometimes bookkeeper. Okay. Kind of a general jack of all trades in the office. Is that true? Yes, sir. Are you familiar with the general office procedures then within Stockman? Yes, sir. And as someone who is familiar with the office procedures, have you, in the position that you're in, become familiar with what Stockman's policies have been in the past up to the present regarding shortages and deductions out of the employees' paychecks and how the office makes its decisions regarding those problems? Yes, sir. Okay. Now, what is the current policy regarding employee shortages at Stockman? We don't take any shortages from employees right now. Okay. Who are the persons who do the daily books in Stockman's office right now? Right now, 2 of them, Gloria Mathos and Lucy Feliciano. Okay, now, when do they do the daily books? Do they still find shortages or funds not accounted for in the daily worksheets? Yes, sir. And when they find those, whose attention do they call them to in the office? To the supervisor. All right. Are you involved in making those decisions about which ones to call to the supervisor's attention? Do they go to you or do they go directly to the supervisor? Well, it goes through me first, then to the supervisor. All right. Do you have any contact with the individual managers or do the supervisors pretty much handle it on their own? When there's a shortage, sometimes the people that do the books, they try to call it to the attention of the supervisor, but then by then, because we are just in one big room, well, I know all about it. Okay, and are there ever occasions where the managers call the office also regarding shortages? Yes, they do. Like when they show a shortage on their shift, they call the office and ask the people that do the books to check the books to make sure that it was really short. Okay. Now in the past, there was a time when Stockman did take shortages out of people's paychecks. Is that correct? Yes, sir. All right. And were you familiar with what the policy was in Stockman about what types of shortages would be taken out of people's paychecks when you were taking them out? The general policy is if over $50 has to be taken out. Okay. Okay. What were typical reasons for not doing deductions from employees' paychecks? If the employee has done it for the first time, or he has sufficient reason, or we have a sufficient reason to believe that it was not done purposely, we don't take it out. Okay, all right. Now, during that period of time when you were taking some deductions out of employees' pay, would the managers ever contact you regarding their book work and shortages that they found? Well, some of the managers, and we compared it with the shortages that we had in the books. Okay. And how would that work? What, sir? How did that work? What would happen? What were the managers doing? Well, if the shortages that the manager gave tallies with the book, then we take it out. But then if not, I mean, like this book shows that it was not short, then we just don't take it out. Okay. Now, was there a time 3 or 4 years ago when Stockman went for a year and didn't take deductions for shortages out of paychecks? Yes, sir. And do you recall exactly what length of time that was where you didn't take money out? I can't remember, sir, but from time to time we don't take shortages, like if we have some problems. Okay. And did there come to be a time when you changed the policy and started to take shortages out of the paychecks again? Yes, we had, yeah. Mr. Brentano asked us to take out the shortages. What, if anything, happened that you know of that caused you to start to take the shortages out again when the shortages get too bad? How do you mean it gets bad, like too many shortages? Your Honor, I'm going to object. If I understand, it's not this witness who's making the decisions with respect to when the shortages are taken out, the circumstances. She can testify as to the mechanics, but it's Mr. Brentano and the documents who can testify as to the policy. She knew what happened, Your Honor. She can describe what happened. It's a factual matter. There's no objection. But to have her say what the policy is, I'm not sure that's proper. She can testify what she did. Sure, if she heard within the organization the reasons for those things happening, I think that she's perfectly competent to testify. That's hearsay, Your Honor. Well, she works for the organization. I think it's a classic example of how it goes to show what Mr. Brentano's state of mind is, and, you know, if she's repeating it, I think she can testify what they did. She can testify what she did, because that's her job to do it, and if so, she can testify. Sustained. All right. Now, at some point in time, ADP was doing the payroll. ADP was the service you were using to do the payroll for Stockman. Is that correct? Yes, sir. Now, for about the last year, you've had your own computer system. Is that right? Yes, sir. And for about 3 or 4 years before that, you used ADP. Is that correct? Yes, sir. Now, could you describe to the court what would happen every pay period, what you did in relationship to the ADP people, how it was that you got the information for them to do the payroll for Stockman? Well, I call the stations when it's time for ADP to pick up the worksheet and call the managers and get the total hours for each employee. Okay, and where did you put that information? It's in a worksheet that ADP provides. All right. Now, on that worksheet, was there a place to put other information besides just how many hours the employee worked? Yes. There is a column for deductions. Okay. And were those columns divided up into A, B, and C, or how were they divided? How were they identified? It's just one column, but then you just have to say A, B, C on it. Okay. So you would have to identify what it was, correct? When we started, they said that A was supposed to be advances. Okay. B is supposed to be shortages. Okay. And C is for credit card chargebacks. Okay. Now, were you the person who did those ADP worksheets? Yes, sir. And were you the person who would take a look at the documents and decide how much deduction should be taken from an employee during a pay period? Now, they give me a list of how much is advances, how much is the shortages, and how much is the credit cards, I mean the papers. They give me the papers and I just add it up and put it in the worksheet. Okay. Now, if an employee took a $30 advance, yes, sir. And if an employee had a $10 shortage and a uniform, which was $50, how would that be identified on the ADP worksheet? Well, it's supposed to be identified according to the category. So if I understand you, I mean, I didn't pay too much attention. And that is because, Your Honor, I'm going to object to the form of the question as leading sustained. Now, what would be included to the employee when they would get the paycheck? What would you attach to their paycheck, whatever we deducted from them? Okay. Did that also include the slip if they received an advance that would be sent to them? Yes, sir. Now, do you have any of the records from the advances that were given to employees in 1980? No, sir. When it's deducted, we attach it to the paycheck and send it back to them? Yes, sir. How about for 1981? Do you have any of those? No, sir, because it's been our policy to attach it to the paychecks. Okay. So if I understand you, the only ones that Stockman would still have would be the people who haven't paid the advance back yet. Yes, sir. Your Honor, I'm going to object to that question as misleading. There's been no testimony as to what the practice was in 82 or 83 or 84. All right, I'll go through each year. Sustained, rephrase. How was the practice conducted in 1982 regarding the ADP worksheet and A and B and C if you had an advance ticket in front of you and also a deduction? How would you decide where you would put that information? Oh, well, as I said, I really didn't pay too much attention. I didn't know that it was important. The A, B, C categories in there because we've got the books anyway for the shortages, and we've got the piece of paper that they sign for advances. So sometimes, to minimize my time, I just put them together and put in any of those letters. I didn't know that it would create problems. All right. Has the procedure to do that been the same in 1983? Was it the same in 1983? Well, I tried my best to put it in the right category, but when I run out of time, I just throw it in. Okay. But were you the person who always did that paperwork? Yes, sir. All right. Now, as long as you've been with Stockman, or let's talk about the time period that's at issue in this case, did Stockman give advances to employees in 1979? Yes, sir. Did Stockman give advances to employees in 1980? Yes, sir. How about in 1981? Yes, sir. How about 1982? Yes, sir. They're not supposed to, but then they get them anyway because they're handling the money. All right. Have there been times in the past when Stockman has made large advances to employees? If it's a large advance, yes. It's in the form of a check if it's a large advance. I mean, that's approved by Mr. Brentano. How big have some of the advances been to employees in the past? Well, $1,000, $3,000, $3,500. How have those monies been paid back? If someone took a $1,000 advance, how was it reimbursed? It depends upon the employee. Sometimes he said he wanted it to be deducted like $50 every payday or $100 every payday until he gets fully paid. Okay. And what column would you put that deduction in? Well, it's supposed to be A, but as I said, Your Honor, I'm going to object. This is the third time that counsel has plowed over the ground in attempting to show that the B's are something other than shortages. Twice the witness has testified that when she's busy, she would mix them up, but she tried her best to keep them in the correct categories. And I see no point in going through it a third time. This is different, Your Honor. She's testifying about something other than a one-time incident. This has to do with a large advance where an agreement would be made and there would be a consistent deduction out of the person's pay. All I'm trying to do is show what happened. All right. You can probably go ahead, but so far she's testified if an employee got a large advance, the employee indicated how he wanted it to be paid back to the company. All right. Now, when the mail comes into Stockman Inc., who gets it and sorts it out? It's me, sir. All right. And how long have you been doing that task? Well, it's maybe about 8 years. Okay. And when you say you sort it out, what do you mean by that? What do you do physically? I physically open up the mail and try to read as much as I can. I sort the bill separately, the checks separately, and then the other mail, the correspondence. All right, during the last 5 years while you've had that job at Stockman, have you ever received any correspondence from the Department of Wages and Labor? Yes, sir. Can you tell me what the procedure is with Stockman when you would get a correspondence from them that some past employee was making a complaint? What did you do? I put it to Mr. Brentano's attention. Okay. And then he asked what the situation was. What is this all about? And then he tried to call the manager. And then they had a meeting and everything. Okay. And then later on they asked me to write a reply to that letter. Okay. So you were the person who would respond to that initial correspondence. Is that correct? According to their instructions, yes. Okay. But what would happen or what does happen if, as a result of the letter that you write, there's further correspondence that comes back to Stockman from the Department of Wages and Labor? It goes to the lawyer, Mr. Brentano's lawyer. Do you send it yourself? Yes, I mail it to their office. All right. Now, do you keep his schedule? Well, if he asks me to. Like if he asked me to, please remind me of such and such, but I mean, I don't really keep the whole thing for him. Okay. Now, in your position in the office, how often is it in the course of a year that money will be missing from one of the white envelopes that will come in from one of the stations once in a while? Is it a common occurrence, frequent? No, sir. What happens if there's money missing from those envelopes? Do you know? They call the station. Okay, anything else that you know about that happens? They try to find the money. Well, sometimes the employee will say that he forgot to drop it. Sometimes they say they found it in their pocket and forgot to drop it in the safe. Okay, or sometimes they never find it. Now, within Stockman, is there an effort to take policies and put them into memos? Does Mr. Brentano ask you to take memos for him that have policies on them? You mean like give them a warning or something? Yeah. Give them warning or tell them what the policy is regarding certain things. Have you ever typed memos like that? Yes. I'm going to show you what is part of exhibit number 42, and it's marked as document number 00114. I'd like you to take a look at this memo. Are you familiar with that particular memo? Yes, sir. All right. For the court's benefit, this is a memo to all station managers advising them that employees were not to work more than 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, or the equivalent of 40 hours a week. Did you type this memo? Yes, sir. And do you know how often this memo has been sent out to the different managers in the field? Many times, sir. All right. And do you know when the original one was sent out? Yes, sir. And do you know when it was originally sent out? I can't remember, sir. All right. Is it a week ago, a year? Oh, no, it must be years ago. All right. Now, did there come to be a time in which Mr. Brentano came to you and you found out about this lawsuit that we're here for today? Yes, sir. Do you remember discussing with him the question of people working overtime when he came to talk to you? Yes, sir. All right. When he came to you to ask you about that or talk to you about that, do you know what he did after he talked to you? Well, he asked me for the timesheet and the payroll and asked me if these employees are working overtime, and I said, I don't know. And he was mad and everything, and he said that he never knew that. Your Honor, I'm going to object. That's hearsay. Sustained. $225, 4 boys for 5 minutes. Starts with question by defense. Ready? During those 2 times, did you remove any of those items that I enumerated from the Cherry Valley residence? No. Mrs. Wayne, when you left in December, had you been planning to leave for some time before that? No. You hadn't? My son's wedding came up, but there wasn't a lot of notice for that because they made their mind up at the last minute. Her mother had died and they had rushed right into it after that. Was Arlen working during November and December of '86? Off and on. I don't remember too much. I'm not referring to working on the Cherry Valley property, but at a regular job off someplace. Sometimes I think I don't really remember a whole lot about that. Isn't it true that prior to your leaving permanently in December that you began to prepare to leave and that you removed things from the house while Arlen was at work during the day? No. During your relationship while you were residing in Cherry Valley, did you have a P.O. box of your own? It was for the renters to send their checks to so they didn't know where we lived. Your answer is yes, you had a P.O. box? Yes. Was it a key type or a combination type? Combination type. Were you the only one who knew the combination? I don't know. When I first took it out, it was shown to Arlen. It was available to him, so I don't know if he retained that or not. You don't know if he knew the combination? I don't know. Are you testifying that at one time he knew the combination to that P.O. box? It was made available to him? Yes. Who showed it to him? I showed it to him. Do you recall when you first showed it to him? When I first opened the box. When did you first open the box? Just after I bought the rentals, I think, because it was for that use. Okay. Did you ever use it for anything else other than collecting your rental receipts? Well, I eventually used it to receive my mail when I moved. How about, and I didn't have an address, how about before you moved? I don't remember. Mrs. Wayne, you received how much from the proceeds of the sale of your house in Sunnyvale? $180,000 something. $182,000 something, wasn't it? And did you report that as a sale or exchange of property on your federal income tax? I don't know what's been done with that. My tax man is handling that, and he has been told about it. He's waiting for this trial to end. Approach the witness, Your Honor. Yes. Oh, sorry. I was going to ask her about her 85 tax return. Mrs. Wayne, when you responded at some point in this thing to some discovery, I've got a copy of your 85 tax return. Now, it isn't signed, so I'd like you to look it over and tell me if this is a correct copy of your 85 tax return. I guess it is. I leave this up to my tax man to put things in order. You may not recall that it is a correct copy of it. If you received it from me, it is a copy of mine, and it would be a correct copy. Thank you, ma'am. Now, on the computation on the sale of your residence in 1985, under Part 1, Computation and Gain, Question 4 asks the selling price of the residence less expenses of sale. Okay, and that indicates $167,150 for what? For the selling price of your residence less expenses of sale. Now, my recollection from the escrow papers that I was shown earlier that your sales price was over $200,000 and that your net was $182,000. That's true. Can you explain the discrepancy that appears to be on this tax form? No, I cannot. After you left for the last time in December, did you have any source of income when you left in the last part of December in 1986, ma'am? Yes, from my rentals. All right. Did you have any other source of income? No. Did you buy a new car shortly after you left him in December of 1986? I sure did. What did you buy, ma'am? I bought a 1986 Ford Courier. I charged it on my Visa because I had no money and I needed transportation. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions at this time. Is there further redirect? Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. I'd like to read part of the area of the deposition that he read yesterday, Mrs. Wayne. He began at, I'm not sure where he began. I'll begin at page 15, line 27. Excuse me, may I have time to find where you're at, Mr. Histon? Which page? Page 15, line 27. Your Honor, may I have a minute to review that area? Yes, sir. How far do you intend to read? To page 16, line 9. Page 15, which line? Line 9. No, starting at page 15, line 27, and ending at 16, line 9. Discussing the monies brought down from Northern California, when you say a large amount, would you give me an idea of what you mean by large? Answer, not at this time, I guess. Question, well, large is kind of a relative figure. Would that be more than $1,000? Answer, yes. Could it be less than $25,000? Excuse me. More than $1,000? Could it be as much as $25,000? Answer, yes. Question, could it be as much as $100,000? Answer, yes. Mrs. Wayne, do you have some difficulty dealing with figures? I've had a lot of trouble remembering, and yes, figures give me a hard time. Has that always been a problem you've had? No. I've had a lot of problem with slowness and all kinds of things since my head was hit. You've had some trouble since your head was injured? Yes. Now, this was the incident that you discussed in July of '86? Yes. When you left this residence, the Beaumont property, in December of 1986, immediately following your son's wedding, had you intended to leave immediately prior to going to his wedding? Immediately prior to going to, let me ask that over again. Immediately prior to leaving for your son's wedding, did you intend to not return? No. Jury charge. Members of the jury, I am going to give you a few brief instructions and then I am going to recess you until morning. That is after I have the indictment read to you and the pleas. I am going to try to be certain that we are finished around 3:30 every afternoon in order to have time to get through the parade traffic on our way home and get home in time for supper. Now, it is a very hard time to hold a trial with the parade traffic interfering with everyone's route. The room in which you will hold your deliberations in is located on your right as you enter the courtroom. You passed it today as you came in. I would request that you always leave the courtroom as a group and proceed into that room, and that's where you will reassemble after every recess. When you are called back into the courtroom, you will always re-enter as a group, please. There are certain restrictions on jurors in this state. I didn't make these rules, but they must be followed. I will not try to explain the reasoning behind them, but simply ask that you obey them. I am obligated to follow them as they are written. One of the rules is that the jurors are not allowed to ask questions of the witnesses, and you must not do so. That is the duty of the attorneys and only of the attorneys. This is directly opposite of a grand jury where the jurors are allowed to ask questions of a witness. Here, you will not be allowed to ask them questions. Also, you are not allowed to take any notes of the trial here to refer to later during your deliberations. I think the theory is that the taking of notes distracts you from the actual testimony, but I am not certain. Regardless of why, that is the law, and we must obey it without question. If you have a question as to what a particular witness has testified to, or if there is a disagreement among you as to what a witness may have testified to, you must have your foreman approach me with a note certifying such, and I will have that witness come back to the stand, swear him or her in again, and allow you to hear that testimony again. When you were instructed earlier in the central gathering room, you were given several rules, general rules, that you were expected to follow, and I assume you have been doing that. And it becomes more essential now that you are an official member of this jury and not simply a prospective one. Please listen carefully to the following. You must limit your contact to any of the parties in this trial to a casual greeting, if even that is necessary, and nothing more than that. That includes the parties, the lawyers, and the witnesses, even the court reporter. Although you have not heard any evidence in this case yet, and there may be a story in the newspaper or a show on television, you must make sure you do not read that story or watch that TV show. You are not allowed to listen to or view any media programs regarding this case, and that includes radio, TV, newspaper, or any other type of media. There's the last day. Members of the jury, I am going to give you a few brief instructions, and then I am going to recess you until morning. That is after I have the indictment ready.